Turns out, reading your own obituary over your morning coffee is quite the appetite suppressant. There I was, sitting in my sister Iris's kitchen in Vermont, scrolling through the Bedford Falls Gazette on my iPad like any normal Tuesday, when I nearly choked on my avocado toast. According to page 6, Marlo Calloway, that's me, had died tragically and unexpectedly over the weekend. I blinked 3 times, wondering if Vermont's organic coffee had hallucinogenic properties I wasn't aware of. The obituary was surprisingly eloquent for someone who couldn't even bother to text me that I was dead. My darling husband Fletcher had apparently been devastated by the sudden loss, but was finding strength in community support. The photo they used was from our trip to Napa 5 years and 15 pounds ago. At least my fictional death had good optics. "Iris!" I screamed, nearly toppling my sister's farmhouse chic bar stool. "Fletcher killed me off!" My sister came running in from her yoga room, still in downward dog position. "What the hell are you talking about?" I thrust the iPad into her hands. "Apparently I died. Very tragic. People are bringing casseroles as we speak." Iris's eyes widened as she scanned the article. "Holy shit, Marlo! This is detailed." It was indeed comprehensive. Marlo Calloway, 38, beloved editor-in-chief of Hudson Valley Style magazine, devoted wife to Fletcher Calloway, passionate advocate for local businesses, and failed plant mom. Okay, they didn't include that last part, but everything else was spot on. The celebration of life was scheduled for Saturday at the Riverside Community Center. How thoughtful of my husband to plan my funeral while I was still using my lungs. "Should we call the paper or the police?" Iris asked, already reaching for her phone. "Wait," I said, suddenly remembering something that made my blood run colder than my now-forgotten oat milk latte. Our life insurance policy. The one Fletcher insisted we upgrade last month. It just went into effect yesterday. The one for $1.5 million, I finished, feeling like I was in some twisted Lifetime movie where the husband was both the villain and incredibly bad at villainy. And his little intern Aubrey started bringing him lunch every day last month. Homemade lunch. Who makes homemade lunch for their boss? Serial killers and homewreckers, that's who. I grabbed my phone to check our home security app. The one Fletcher always complained was an unnecessary invasion of privacy. There they were, in our kitchen, drinking champagne. My champagne? The Moet I'd been saving for my promotion announcement? Are they celebrating? Iris gasped, peering over my shoulder. They absolutely were. Fletcher was popping the cork while Aubrey, with her perfect Gen Z skin and middle part, arranged cheese on my West Elm serving board. In my house, with my allegedly grieving husband, while I was supposedly decomposing somewhere. "Turn up the volume," Iris whispered, unnecessarily. We were both already leaning toward the phone like it was about to reveal the meaning of life. "Just need to wait for the insurance verification," Fletcher was saying, his voice slightly slurred. "Warren Griffin from Regional Life called today. Standard procedure," he said. "How long will that take?" Aubrey asked, sliding her hand over my countertop in a way that suggested she was already mentally redecorating. "A week, maybe less. Then we're golden, babe. New start, new life." New life? I had apparently traded mine in without even getting the coupon. That's when an idea hit me with the force of a suburban mom spotting a Target clearance sale. I wasn't going to call the police. Not yet. I wasn't going to storm home and confront them. No. I was going to stay dead. For now. "Iris," I said slowly, a plan forming that would make even the messiest Housewives episode look tame. "I need to borrow your laptop. And maybe your black dress. The funeral one?" "Exactly." I smiled, feeling a surge of something between rage and exhilaration. If Fletcher wants to mourn me so badly, I'll give him something to really cry about. I spent the next hour making 3 phone calls. One to my boss explaining I needed an emergency week of remote work, family emergency, not technically a lie. One to Warren Griffin at Regional Life Insurance, who was very confused to hear from a dead person. And one to Detective Noah Sinclair, who came highly recommended for catching cheating spouses. By Thursday, I had a plan that would make Fletcher's betrayal look like a kindergarten-level scheme. He wanted me dead? Fine. But the thing about the dead is, sometimes they come back. And when they do, they bring receipts, witnesses, and a vengeance that would make even the most dramatic daytime soap opera writers take notes. If Fletcher wanted to play dead, I'd show him what a real funeral looked like. His careers. Staying dead was surprisingly productive. No meetings, no small talk, no pretending to care about Karen from accounting's keto journey. Just me, my laptop, and the meticulous documentation of my husband's spectacular betrayal from my sister's guest bedroom turned command center. He's updated his LinkedIn, Iris announced Wednesday morning, hunched over her MacBook like we were CIA agents tracking a terrorist. Who updates LinkedIn when they're grieving? I leaned over to look. Fletcher Calloway had indeed updated his professional profile, with a somber black ribbon emoji and a heartfelt post about navigating profound personal loss while finding strength in professional purpose. It had 347 sympathetic reactions and 89 comments, including one from Aubrey that read, "Your resilience inspires us all. Here for you always." Here for you always? I snorted. She's been here for him since she started bringing homemade quinoa bowls to the office. Nothing says I want to replace your wife like meal prep. The most revolting part? People from our shared social circle were commenting with heart emojis and prayer hands, including Monica Lawson, my supposed best friend since college, who had texted me exactly 0 times to verify that I was, in fact, deceased. What kind of friend doesn't even call to make sure you're actually dead? I asked Iris, who was refilling my wine glass with her fancy Oregon Pinot Noir. It was barely noon, but conventional drinking hours don't apply when you're legally dead. The kind who's been sleeping with your husband, Iris said casually, like she was commenting on the weather. I choked on my wine. What? Oh, please. That whole business trip to Scottsdale last year? Monica was mysteriously at a conference the same weekend, and they came back with identical Southwestern silver jewelry. The memory hit me like a Peloton instructor's peppy demands for just one more push. Fletcher had returned with a silver bracelet he claimed was from a local artisan market, while Monica had shown off eerily similar earrings at our book club the following week. That jewelry-matching snake, I muttered, opening our home security app to check on the current state of affairs. Fletcher was in our bedroom, my bedroom, sorting through my clothes with Aubrey, who was holding up my favorite Eileen Fisher sweater against her annoyingly toned body. Is he giving away my clothes already? My voice went up 3 octaves. That cashmere was from the Nordstrom anniversary sale. Turn up the volume, Iris said, leaning in with the intensity of a suburban mom at a PTA meeting about controversial library books. Don't think black is really her color, Aubrey was saying, tossing my sweater aside like it was from Target clearance. But this might work for the memorial. Appropriately somber, but still, me. Take whatever you want, Fletcher replied, his voice dripping with the generosity of someone giving away things that weren't his. Marlo would have wanted her things to be appreciated. Oh, I absolutely would not, I hissed at the screen. She had good taste in some things, Aubrey continued, moving to my jewelry box with the precision of a surgeon approaching a heart transplant. My actual heart was pounding as she opened it, her perfectly manicured fingers hovering over my grandmother's pearl necklace. But her style was a bit mature for me, she added, closing the box with a dismissive snap that made me want to reach through the screen and snatch her middle part right off her head. You're 11 years younger and 2 dress sizes smaller. We get it, I muttered, taking another gulp of wine. The doorbell rang on screen. Fletcher looked momentarily panicked, like someone who had just remembered they were supposed to be in mourning, not hosting a closet raid. That's probably another casserole, he said, straightening his deliberately rumpled grieving husband Oxford shirt. Wait here. He left, and Aubrey immediately dove for my vanity, trying on my Tom Ford lipstick, the $58 one I bought myself as a birthday splurge. She took a selfie, then started rifling through my bedside drawer. Oh my God, check my nightstand, I told the screen, as if Aubrey could hear my warnings. I dare you. She pulled out my journal, the leather-bound one where I'd been documenting Fletcher's growing disinterest in our marriage for the past 6 months. Her eyes widened as she flipped through it, landing on what I presumed were my detailed entries about suspecting he was having an affair. She quickly stuffed it into her oversized tote bag just as Fletcher returned. "Jackpot," I whispered to Iris. "She took my journal." "That's theft," Iris pointed out. "That's evidence," I corrected her with a smile that would have made my therapist very concerned about my mental state. Fletcher came back upstairs with Warren Griffin, the insurance investigator who looked exactly like his voice on the phone suggested, like a basset hound in a JCPenney suit. "Sorry to disturb you during this difficult time, Mr. Calloway," Warren said, his tone suggesting this was his fourth grieving spouse visit of the day. "Just need to clarify a few details about your wife's passing." Aubrey awkwardly stood in the corner, trying to look like a supportive friend, rather than someone who had just been rifling through a dead woman's possessions. "This is Aubrey, my colleague," Fletcher introduced her with an unconvincing professional nod. "She's been helping me manage during this difficult time." Warren's expression didn't change, but somehow his eyebrows conveyed that he'd seen this scenario play out about 1,000 times in his 27 years at Regional Life Insurance. "I see," he said, pulling out a form. Now, regarding the circumstances of Mrs. Calloway's death, Fletcher launched into the elaborate story he'd concocted. A hiking accident in Vermont, a tragic fall, local authorities handling everything. His performance deserved a Razzie for Worst Actor in a straight-to-Netflix drama. "And the body?" Warren asked, making a note. "Cremated," Fletcher replied smoothly. "It was what she would have wanted." "How convenient," I said to my phone screen. "Cremated before anyone could verify I had a pulse." "And you have the death certificate?" Fletcher's confident facade cracked slightly. "It's being processed. The Vermont authorities said it might take a few days because of the unusual circumstances." Warren nodded, writing something down that made Fletcher shift uncomfortably. "We'll need that certificate, of course, along with the police report from the Vermont authorities." "Absolutely," Fletcher agreed, sweat now visible on his forehead. "Just waiting for the paperwork." As they continued talking, I texted Noah Sinclair, the private detective I'd hired. "Insurance investigator at the house now." Fletcher claiming VT authorities handling everything. "Cremation. No death certificate yet." Noah's reply came instantly. "Perfect. Vermont officials deny any reports of hiking accidents matching your description from the weekend. He's digging his own grave." I smiled, feeling the first genuine happiness since discovering my premature obituary. "Speaking of graves," I texted back, "are we all set for Saturday's memorial?" "All arranged," he replied. "Griffin is on board too. Operation Resurrection is a go." Iris looked over my shoulder at the exchange. "You know, most people would just file for divorce." I turned to my sister with the serene smile of someone who had transcended mere marital dissolution. "Divorce is for the living, Iris. And according to the Bedford Falls Gazette, I'm very much dead." I raised my wine glass in a toast to the phone screen, where Fletcher was now awkwardly escorting Warren to the door. "But I promise you this. My resurrection is going to be absolutely killer." By Thursday afternoon, my death had become Bedford Falls's hottest topic since the high school principal was caught selling homemade kombucha with a suspicious alcohol content at the farmer's market. My inbox overflowed with condolence emails from colleagues who apparently couldn't be bothered to call my emergency contacts. The Hudson Valley-style Instagram posted a black square with my initials, the lazy person's grief equivalent of sending thoughts and prayers. "Look at this," I told Iris, showing her my phone. Cynthia from the art department wrote, "Heaven gained an angel," with the crying emoji. She literally called me editorial Stalin last month because I rejected her cursive font choice. "The death industrial complex at work," Iris replied, handing me a fresh mug of coffee. "Nothing like a colleague's demise to boost social media engagement." I was about to respond when a text from Detective Noah Sinclair lit up my phone. "Check your email. Found something interesting." The email contained a video attachment and a brief message. "Security footage from the Landing Hotel last Friday night. Your husband checked in under Frank Carson, paid cash but used his actual credit card for room service." "Frank Carson?" Iris raised an eyebrow. "That's the most generic alias ever. It's like calling yourself John Smith, but somehow even more boring." "It's from the protagonist in his unpublished detective novel," I explained. The one he's been working on for 7 years that's still just an outline and 3 paragraphs. The video showed Fletcher and Aubrey entering the boutique hotel that was conveniently located 3 blocks from our house. Aubrey was carrying an overnight bag. My overnight bag, the Longchamp tote I'd bought in Paris that Fletcher had claimed was stolen from the coat check at his company Christmas party. He gave her my Longchamp, I gasped, more offended by this theft than the actual affair. That's a $300 bag he said was stolen. I filed an insurance claim. Focus, Marlo, Iris said, rewinding the video. Look at what she's carrying in her other hand. It was a manila folder thick with papers, labeled clearly even on the grainy security footage. Insurance. They were planning this, I whispered, feeling a strange combination of vindication and nausea. The hotel meetup was the night before I left for Vermont, and the insurance policy activated the day after you died, Iris added, connecting the dots faster than a Facebook algorithm tracking shopping habits. Noah's email included one more crucial detail. Fletcher accessed your cloud storage last week and downloaded copies of your birth certificate, passport scan, and social security card. Identity theft on top of regular theft and fake death? He's going for the felony trifecta, I muttered, feeling my rage crystallize into something sharper, more focused. What's the plan now? Iris asked. I pulled out the notebook where I'd been outlining Operation Resurrection, with the same meticulous attention I usually reserved for the magazine's fall fashion issue. Noah has secured video evidence of Fletcher and Aubrey's hotel rendezvous, plus documentation of the insurance timing, I explained. Warren Griffin is ready to accidentally arrive early to the memorial service with his fraud investigation team, but we need more. I opened my laptop to show Iris what I'd discovered digging through our shared cloud drive, something Fletcher apparently hadn't considered when plotting my demise. Fletcher's been embezzling from his company, I explained, displaying spreadsheets and suspicious bank transfers. He's been skimming from the marketing budget for months. Small amounts, but they add up to nearly $50,000. How did you figure this out? Iris looked impressed. Remember when he insisted I help him organize his files last Christmas? I found discrepancies between reported expenses and actual receipts. I thought he was just terrible at bookkeeping, but now it's clear he's been building a getaway fund. I clicked to another folder. And here's the piece de resistance. He's been looking at properties in Costa Rica, non-extradition country, beautiful beaches, perfect for a marketing executive with a stolen identity, and his much younger girlfriend. Damn, Marlo, Iris whispered. You're like Jessica Fletcher meets the Count of Monte Cristo. Except I'm not waiting decades for my revenge, I replied, checking our home security app again. Fletcher was in our home office, frantically searching through file cabinets. Aubrey stood in the doorway looking nervous. Can't find the original policy, he was saying, tossing papers aside. Warren wants to see it tomorrow. Can't you download another copy? Aubrey suggested. It has to be the original with signatures, Fletcher snapped. Otherwise, they'll delay payment even longer. I smirked, opening my purse to reveal the insurance policy in question, safely tucked away in a folder. I'd removed it from our files before leaving for Vermont, not because I suspected anything, but because I'd planned to review the coverage details during my trip. Looking for this, darling? I asked the screen, waving the document like a trophy. My phone rang. Noah Sinclair calling with an update. I've got news, he said without preamble. Your husband just applied for an expedited passport under your name. Used the documents he downloaded from your cloud storage. How is that even possible? I asked, my stomach dropping. Don't they need me in person? He claimed it was a replacement for a damaged passport. Submitted everything online with your electronic signature, which he apparently had access to from your shared accounts. That's next-level identity theft, Iris muttered, looking increasingly concerned. It gets worse, Noah continued. I had my contact at the bank check your joint accounts. Fletcher emptied them yesterday, all $87,000. The room seemed to tilt slightly. This wasn't just an insurance scam anymore. Fletcher was setting up his complete disappearance, with my identity and our money. The memorial is in 2 days, Noah reminded me. If we're going to catch him before he runs, that's our window. After hanging up, I turned to Iris, my shock hardening into determination. We need to accelerate the plan, He's not just trying to cash in on my death, he's planning to vanish with everything. What do we do? Iris asked. I pulled up the seating chart I'd been designing for my memorial service, because of course I'd want the perfect arrangement for my grand return from the dead. First, I need you to contact Fletcher's parents, I said. Tell them you've been trying to reach Fletcher about funeral arrangements, but he's not answering. Say you're worried about his mental state. Howard and Vivian Calloway. Iris nodded. The ones who gave him that ridiculous world's greatest son coffee mug he keeps on his desk? The very same, I confirmed. They adore their precious boy and have no idea he's a sociopathic fraud. Let's make sure they have front row seats to his downfall. Next, I called Warren Griffin, who was surprisingly enthusiastic about catching Fletcher in the act. Apparently, insurance investigators lived for moments like these. Your husband has set off every red flag in our fraud detection system, Warren explained. No death certificate, conflicting stories about where the death occurred, and an insurance policy that activated suspiciously close to the claim death date. It's like insurance fraud bingo. And you're sure you can get a warrant by Saturday? I asked. Already in process. We've coordinated with local police. They'll arrive about 15 minutes into the service, right after your husband gives his eulogy. The final piece fell into place when Noah texted that he'd confirmed two crucial details. Fletcher had booked one-way tickets to San Jose, Costa Rica for Sunday morning under the names Frank and Aubrey Carson, and Aubrey had given notice at work effective immediately due to personal reasons. I sat back in Iris's armchair, looking at the elaborate plan we'd constructed. Part of me felt a twinge of sadness at how thoroughly my marriage had disintegrated without me noticing. Another, larger part felt an almost electric anticipation for what would happen at Riverside Community Center on Saturday afternoon. You know, Iris said, studying my expression, most people who discover their spouse is cheating just key their car or cut holes in their clothes. I smoothed the seating chart, placing Warren Griffin and the police detective strategically near the exit doors to block any potential escape attempts. Most people aren't pronounced dead by their husband while they're still very much alive, I replied, with a smile that would have made a shark reconsider its life choices. Besides, I'm not just getting revenge. I'm getting a story that will bump our magazine's readership by at least 30%. I picked up my phone to make one final call to Monica Lawson, my supposedly best friend who hadn't bothered to verify my death. Monica? It's Marlo, I said when she answered, savoring her stunned silence. Yes, that Marlo. Not quite as dead as advertised. Listen, I need you at my memorial service on Saturday. Front row, if you don't mind. Wear something nice. There's going to be a photographer. As I hung up, Iris looked at me with newfound respect. Remind me never to cross you. Don't worry, I assured her, closing my laptop with a satisfying click. I save my best revenge for those who truly deserve it. And Fletcher's performance at my memorial deserves nothing less than a standing ovation and handcuffs. Saturday arrived with the kind of perfect early autumn weather usually reserved for wedding photo shoots and cider donut commercials. The irony wasn't lost on me. My fake funeral had better weather than my actual wedding day, which had featured a surprise thunderstorm that turned my cathedral veil into a wet dish rag. Are you sure about the dress? Iris asked as I surveyed myself in her full-length mirror. I'd opted for a fitted black sheath with a dramatic red blazer. Funeral appropriate with a splash of surprise. I'm not dead. Absolutely, I replied, applying another coat of what the Sephora salesgirl had named Revenge Red Lipstick. Black for the occasion, red for the resurrection. Plus, Fletcher always hated this blazer, said it was too aggressive for the suburbs. Noah picked us up at precisely 1:30 p.m., giving us time to arrive at the memorial service right at the climactic moment. His car, an understated black sedan that screamed, "I follow cheating spouses for a living," was parked a block away to avoid tipping off any early guests who might recognize Iris's vehicle. Warren's team is in place, Noah informed us as we drove toward the Riverside Community Center. He's stationed at the back entrance with 2 officers and a representative from Fletcher's company. They've been briefed on the embezzlement evidence. I checked my watch, a vintage Cartier that had been my grandmother's. What's the timing? Memorial starts at 2 p.m. Fletcher is scheduled to begin his eulogy at 2:20. Warren's team will enter at 2:25, and you'll make your entrance at 2:30. The side door will be unlocked. I've arranged for the photographer from the Gazette to be there under the pretense of covering a beloved local editor's memorial. Perfect. I nodded, feeling surprisingly calm for someone about to crash their own funeral. And Fletcher's parents? Front row, looking appropriately devastated, Noah confirmed. I did a drive-by earlier. Howard's wearing a suit that's at least 2 sizes too big, and Vivian has enough tissues to stock a Kleenex factory. We parked in the community center's rear lot and slipped into Noah's stakeout position, a janitorial closet with a convenient view of the main hall through a ventilation grate. It wasn't glamorous, but it offered an excellent vantage point of Fletcher standing at the podium, looking the perfect picture of grief in his charcoal suit. The attendance was impressive. At least 60 people filled the chairs. I spotted my entire editorial team, several of Fletcher's colleagues, and most of our neighbors. Monica sat rigidly in the front row beside Fletcher's parents, her face locked in the artificial grief expression she usually reserved for Instagram sympathy posts. "Who's the blonde in the third row?" I whispered to Iris. "The one dabbing her eyes but clearly checking her phone every 30 seconds? "Fletcher's ex from college," Iris whispered back. "Emily something. She commented sending strength with a heart emoji on his Facebook post about your death. She sent a flower arrangement to our wedding with a card that said, 'You'll always be my first love,'" I recalled. Charming that she made time in her schedule for my demise. Fletcher adjusted the microphone, his performance as the grieving widower Oscar-worthy. His voice cracked at precisely the right moments as he spoke about our beautiful years together, and how Marlo would want us to celebrate her life, not mourn her death. "That's rich coming from the man who cleaned out our bank accounts," I muttered. Then came the coup de théâtre. Fletcher dabbed at his eyes with a handkerchief, my handkerchief monogrammed by my mother, and revealed his special guest. "I'd like to thank Aubrey Bennett for her extraordinary support during this impossible time," he said, gesturing to Aubrey, who rose from her seat in the second row. "Marlo would be so grateful for your kindness." Aubrey had the audacity to wear a black dress that looked suspiciously like one from my closet. The Diane von Furstenberg wrap dress I'd splurged on for last year's charity gala. "Is that my DVF?" I hissed. "Focus, Marlo," Noah warned. "Warren's team is moving in." Right on cue, the back doors opened. Warren Griffin entered, flanked by 2 police officers and a stern-looking woman in a crisp pantsuit I recognized as Helen Tate, the CFO of Fletcher's company. Fletcher faltered mid-sentence about my generous spirit, his eyes widening as Warren approached the front of the room. "Mr. Calloway," Warren announced, his voice carrying through the stunned audience. "I need to speak with you regarding some concerning discrepancies in your insurance claim." Fletcher's face performed an impressive journey from fake grief to genuine panic in under 3 seconds. This is hardly the time or place," he stammered, looking frantically for an escape route. "I'm afraid it's precisely the time," Warren replied, nodding to the officers, "especially considering the fraud, identity theft, and embezzlement allegations we're investigating." A collective gasp rippled through the memorial attendees. Howard Calloway stood up, his oversized suit making him look like a child playing dress-up. "What's the meaning of this? My son is grieving." "Is he, though?" I asked, making my entrance through the side door with timing that would make Broadway directors weep with envy. The room exploded in shocked exclamations. Monica actually screamed. Fletcher's mother, Vivian, fainted sideways into Howard's arms, crumpling his already ill-fitting suit further. Fletcher's face drained of all color as he gripped the podium for support. "Marlo? But you're dead?" I supplied helpfully, walking slowly toward the front of the room. "Cremated in Vermont after a tragic hiking accident? That's strange, because I've been in Vermont, but hiking wasn't on the itinerary. Neither was dying." The Gazette photographer was snapping pictures frantically, capturing Fletcher's expression of pure horror as I approached. "You should see your face right now," I told him, stopping directly in front of the podium. "It's the look of someone who just realized he committed fraud, identity theft, and embezzlement for absolutely nothing." Aubrey made a dash for the exit, only to be intercepted by one of the police officers. "Not so fast. he said. "We have some questions about your involvement in the insurance fraud scheme." "I didn't know anything about that," she protested, clutching my DVF dress with white-knuckled hands. "And I certainly didn't know about the embezzlement." Fletcher's head snapped toward her. "Aubrey, don't say another word." "Oh, please let her talk," I encouraged, turning to the audience who sat frozen in collective shock. "She might mention the Costa Rica tickets for tomorrow morning." Under the names Frank and Audrey Carson, very creative, Fletcher, the CFO from Fletcher's company stepped forward, her expression glacial. "Mr. Calloway, we've found evidence that you've diverted approximately $50,000 from the marketing budget into your personal accounts over the past 8 months. "That's a lie," Fletcher sputtered, but his protestations had all the conviction of a toddler denying he ate cookies while covered in chocolate. I removed the insurance policy from my purse. "Looking for this?" I asked, waving it at Fletcher. "The original policy you've been tearing the house apart to find? The one you needed to complete your claim for my very premature death benefit?" Warren took the document, nodding appreciatively. "This completes our fraud investigation file nicely." Vivian Calloway had regained consciousness and was staring at me like I'd risen from the grave, which, from her perspective, was essentially true. "But the obituary," Fletcher said. "Fletcher said a lot of things," I replied gently. "Like how he had business trips to Scottsdale when he was actually taking Monica Lawson there for romantic getaways." All eyes turned to Monica, who looked like she wanted to melt into her sensible beige pumps. "It was just once," she squeaked, which was both a confession and obviously a lie. "And Emily," I continued, addressing Fletcher's college ex who was now frantically gathering her purse. "Those late-night work calls from Fletcher weren't about marketing strategies, were they?" Emily froze halfway to standing, then slowly sank back into her chair. "Fletcher," Howard Calloway's voice trembled with disbelief. "What have you done? He faked my death to collect insurance money, emptied our joint accounts of $87,000, planned to flee to Costa Rica with my identity and his intern, and has been systematically cheating with at least 3 women that I know of," I summarized helpfully. "Also, he gave away my designer clothes without permission, which feels like a lesser crime but still hurts." The officers moved toward Fletcher, who was now ashen-faced and sweating profusely. "Fletcher Calloway," the lead officer began, "you're under arrest for insurance fraud, identity theft, grand larceny, and embezzlement." As they handcuffed him, Fletcher finally found his voice. "Marlo, you don't understand. We were having problems. I was going to send money back to you once I was settled." "Save it for your lawyer," I suggested, watching as they escorted him and a sobbing Aubrey toward the exit. Though I'd recommend one who specializes in multiple felonies, rather than the guy who handled our wills. The memorial hall erupted into chaos as people processed what they'd witnessed. Warren approached with a satisfied smile. "Mrs. Calloway, that was the most efficient fraud bust I've overseen in 27 years at Regional Life." "Happy to help," I replied. "Though I'd appreciate if you'd drop the Mrs. I don't think I'll be keeping the name." Iris appeared at my side, handing me a glass of what was supposed to be memorial reception punch, but that she'd clearly spiked with the emergency flask she kept in her purse. "Best funeral ever," she declared, clinking her glass against mine. "Though technically it wasn't yours after all." "Oh, but it was," I corrected her, watching as Fletcher was placed in the back of a police car. "It was the funeral of my marriage, Fletcher's career, and his freedom all at once." Howard and Vivian approached cautiously, like they were afraid I might actually be a ghost. "Marlo," Howard began, his voice cracking, "we had no idea." "Of course you didn't," I assured them, genuinely sympathetic to their shock. Fletcher was very convincing. He convinced me too, for 12 years. Vivian clutched my hands, tears streaming down her face. "What can we do?" "You can stop blaming yourselves," I told them, "and maybe reconsider that world's greatest son mug." As the chaos settled and the stunned attendees began to disperse, Noah approached with news. "The bank has frozen the accounts Fletcher emptied. They should be able to recover most of the money." "That's good," I nodded, suddenly feeling the weight of everything. "Though somehow I don't think we'll be splitting assets equally in the divorce." I'd say you have the upper hand in negotiations, Noah observed dryly. The Gazette reporter approached, notebook in hand. Mrs. Calloway, would you be willing to give a statement about what just happened? I looked around the memorial hall, at the flowers purchased for my non-existent funeral, at the enlarged photo of me that Fletcher had selected from our honeymoon when I still believed in happily ever after, at the shocked faces of friends and colleagues processing the spectacular implosion they'd just witnessed. Actually, I said, a smile spreading across my face, I think I'll write this story myself. 3 months after my spectacular resurrection, life had settled into a new normal that was anything but normal. My byline, Marlowe Bennett, reclaiming my maiden name faster than Fletcher could say plea bargain, now accompanied the most read column in Hudson Valley Styles history. Dead Wife Walking, When Your Spouse Decides to Kill You Off. The first installment had crashed our website within hours of publication. Turns out, nothing boosts readership like a first-person account of attending your own funeral and watching your husband being hauled away in handcuffs. I sat in my new apartment overlooking the Hudson River, sipping coffee from a mug Iris had custom-made that read, "Technically immortal." My phone buzzed with a text from Noah Sinclair, who had transitioned from private investigator to something more personal in the aftermath of Fletcher Gate. Court update? Fletcher got denied bail. Again. I smiled into my coffee. Fletcher's legal situation had gone from bad to catastrophic when the financial investigation revealed he'd been embezzling from 3 previous employers, too. The prosecutor had used the phrase, pattern of sophisticated fraud, so many times during the preliminary hearing that it could have been a drinking game. My doorbell rang. Iris arriving for our weekly Sunday brunch tradition, carrying a bakery box from that ridiculously overpriced patisserie she loved. "You're going to die when you see what I found," she announced, dropping her purse on my counter. She paused, wincing at her choice of words. "Sorry, poor phrasing." "It's fine," I laughed. "Death jokes are fair game when you've been legally deceased." She pulled out her phone, showing me Fletcher's latest prison video call with Aubrey. I'd never explicitly asked how Iris gained access to these recordings, and she'd never volunteered the information. Some sisters share clothes. We shared surveillance footage. "Watch his face when she tells him," Iris instructed, hitting play. On screen, Fletcher looked considerably less polished than the man who'd once lectured me about the importance of maintaining appearances when I suggested wearing jeans to a neighborhood barbecue. His prison-issued attire clashed spectacularly with his country club sensibilities. "Lawyer says I might be able to get immunity if I testify," Aubrey was saying, her perfect Gen Z skin now stress-broken out around her chin. "About everything, Fletcher. The embezzlement, the insurance fraud, the identity theft." Fletcher's expression collapsed like a soufflé in a slammed oven. "You can't do that, Aubrey. We had a plan." "Your plan put me in an orange jumpsuit for 2 weeks," she hissed, leaning toward the camera. "Do you know what happens to your skin in county lockup? They don't exactly provide drunk elephant moisturizer in the commissary." I couldn't help but laugh. Her priorities remain impeccable. "Here's the best part," Iris said, fast-forwarding slightly. "And one more thing," Aubrey continued on screen, her voice dropping to a dramatic whisper. "I sold the tell-all rights to my story. The Other Woman, How I Almost Escaped with America's Dumbest Fraudster." "You did what?" Fletcher's face contorted in horror. "Netflix documentary series," Aubrey smirked. "They're thinking 6 episodes. Don't worry, I used your good side in the photos I provided. The left one, where you don't have that weird ear thing." The call ended with Fletcher repeatedly yelling Aubrey's name as she disconnected with a little finger wave. "I almost feel sorry for him," I mused, reaching for a chocolate croissant from the bakery box. "Almost?" Iris raised an eyebrow. "Almost in the way you almost feel bad when a cartoon villain falls off a cliff after trying to drop an anvil on someone," I clarified. Theoretical sympathy that evaporates immediately when you remember context. My phone chimed with an email notification. The final divorce decree had been processed. Despite Fletcher's current address being the Bedford Falls Correctional Facility, the divorce proceedings had been surprisingly straightforward. When your soon-to-be ex is facing 15-20 years for multiple felonies involving your faked death, judges tend to be sympathetic to your property requests. It's official, I told Iris, holding up my phone. I am officially uncallowayed. Congratulations on your divorce from the worst criminal mastermind in upstate New York, Iris said, raising her coffee mug and toast. Please, he wasn't even the worst criminal mastermind on our block, I corrected. Remember when the Henderson's son tried to counterfeit $20 bills using green construction paper and a photocopier? At least Justin Henderson was 8 years old, not 42 with a Stanford MBA, Iris pointed out. I laughed, but felt a familiar pang of retrospective embarrassment. How did I not see it, Iris? 12 years of marriage, and I had no idea I was living with someone capable of faking my death for insurance money. Because normal people don't expect their partners to be practicing amateur obituary writing in their spare time, Iris replied. Hindsight makes fools of us all. Still, I sighed, scrolling through the divorce document. There were signs, the secret phone calls, the mysterious weekend conferences that never seemed to generate any email trails, the way he insisted we upgrade our life insurance right before my accident. You know what Fletcher's biggest mistake was? Iris asked, licking chocolate from her fingers. Besides the obvious felonies. What? Underestimating you, she said simply. He thought you were just another suburban wife who'd be too overwhelmed by grief to notice discrepancies in his story. I nodded, thinking about the women who'd approached me after my story broke. Other wives and girlfriends who'd spotted the warning signs of infidelity and fraud, but second-guessed themselves into silence. My inbox had become a confessional for women who'd been gaslit by partners, made to feel crazy for asking questions about missing money or unexplained absences. The doorbell rang again. This time it was Warren Griffin, carrying a large envelope and looking considerably more cheerful than when we'd first spoken. The insurance check, he announced without preamble, handing me the envelope. Not the death benefit, obviously, but the fraud victim compensation, plus interest. I invited him in for coffee, which he accepted with the enthusiasm of someone whose daily routine involved more fraudsters than friends. So what happens now with Fletcher's case? I asked, pouring him a cup. He's trying to negotiate a plea deal, but the prosecutor isn't feeling generous, Warren explained. 5 different charges across 3 jurisdictions, plus the attempted identity theft for the passport fraud. He'll be lucky to see daylight before he qualifies for senior discounts. And Aubrey? Iris asked. Rolled over faster than a trained dog, Warren said with professional admiration. Gave up everything in exchange for a reduced sentence. She'll probably get probation, maybe a few months in minimum security. She's already signed with a literary agent. Of course she has, I muttered, probably using my stolen moleskin notebook to draft chapters. After Warren left, Iris helped me hang the final touches in my new apartment. Framed covers of the magazine issues containing my Dead Wife column series. The latest featured a stylized illustration of me rising phoenix-like from memorial flowers, with the headline, Resurrection and Reinvention, Building a New Life After Being Declared Dead. Have you heard from Fletcher's parents? Iris asked as we adjusted the frame. Howard calls every few weeks to apologize for raising a criminal mastermind without the mastermind part, I said. Vivian sends care packages with homemade cookies and self-help books with titles like When Bad Men Happen to Good Women and Healing from Marital Betrayal. That's oddly sweet, Iris observed. It is, I agreed. They're decent people who are mortified by their son's actions. I've assured them they're not responsible for Fletcher's moral compass going haywire in middle age. My phone buzzed with a text from Monica Lawson. Her weekly attempt at reconciliation, which I continued to ignore with the serene patience of someone who had all the time in the world. Literally. When you've already died once, on paper, you become remarkably selective about who gets access to your second life. The Hudson Valley-style team had embraced my strange celebrity status, turning my personal catastrophe into our most successful editorial pivot in years. My editor's letter now closed with, very much alive and thriving, which had become something of a personal mantra. That evening, Noah came over for dinner, bringing case files for the book we were co-authoring, Playing Dead Inside the World of Faked Deaths and Insurance Fraud. It turned out my experience was surprisingly common, if usually less dramatically resolved. Your case study is still my favorite, Noah admitted as we spread documents across my dining table. Most insurance fraudsters at least make sure their spouse is out of cell phone range before declaring them dead. Fletcher always did think he was the smartest person in the room, I reflected. That's usually a fatal flaw in both Greek tragedies and criminal enterprises. As Noah organized interview transcripts, I stepped onto my small balcony overlooking the river, watching the sunset paint the water copper and gold. There was something poetic about having a view like this after years in a suburban house where the most exciting vista was the Johnsons' meticulous lawn care schedule in action. A year ago, I'd been Marlo Calloway, comfortably married magazine editor, blissfully unaware that my husband was plotting my paper demise while embezzling from his company and sleeping with my friends. I'd been living what I thought was a good life, never questioning the occasional inconsistencies or convenient explanations. Now I had a new name, a new home, a successful column, a book deal, and perhaps most importantly, a finely tuned bullshit detector that would make airport security scanners seem imprecise by comparison. Fletcher had tried to write my ending, publishing my obituary without consulting the main character of the story. His critical error wasn't just the fraud or the embezzlement or even the cheating. It was assuming he controlled the narrative. But here's the thing about stories. They belong to the people who live them, not the people who try to edit them without permission. Fletcher tried to reduce me to a plot device in his escape fantasy. Instead, he became a cautionary tale in mine. I raised my wine glass to the setting sun, toasting my own unexpected resurrection and the sweet justice of Fletcher's downfall. Here's to living well, I whispered to the horizon. It really is the best revenge, especially when you get to watch your would-be murderer's booking photo go viral on Twitter. Somewhere in the Bedford Falls Correctional Facility, Fletcher Calloway was eating mystery meatloaf in an orange jumpsuit, wondering how his perfect plan had imploded so spectacularly. And I was here, very much alive, with a second chance at a first-rate life. It turns out that sometimes you have to die, at least on paper, to truly learn how to live.